Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
Thank you for joining this Community IT Podcast Part 2. You can find Part 1 in your podcast feed if you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Community IT and Build Consulting webinar for November 2019, titled How Data Quality Defines Your Organization. Today, I'll be introducing a simple framework for understanding data quality that you can use to help drive data quality conversations at your organizations, leading to improvements in the quality of your data, as well as fundraising outcomes and mission impact. My name is Peter Miras. I'm a partner at Build Consulting. I have 20 years serving all manner of nonprofit organizations ranging in size from small and local to enterprise, global-sized organization across a wide variety of industry categories and mission orientations. And over the past 8 years, I've worked exclusively with nonprofit organizations. I've worked with over 100 clients in the nonprofit, government, and for-profit spaces. And I have three primary areas of expertise: information strategy in general, constituent relationship management, and communications. And I'm Build's resident expert on data quality. I'm going to quickly talk about some of Build Consulting's observations regarding data quality in the nonprofit space, and briefly talk about making the case for data quality so you can help introduce the conversation of why data quality at your organization. We're going to talk in a little bit more technical terms about the 5 dimensions of data quality with some accompanying case studies. And then I'll provide some practical recommendations that you can use to help your organizations think about data quality and prioritizing what data to collect and maintain. For each of the data dimensions covered in today's presentation, we cited a real-life example that included some sort of problem or challenge. One might reasonably ask how these challenges can be addressed. And this is the part where I get into some recommendations about how you can start advancing conversations about data quality within your organizations, because it's sort of hard to get out there and say, hey, everybody, let's talk about completeness, accuracy, and validity, consistency, all of the different more technical definitions and the technical aspects of data quality. So the approach that I prefer is rooted in 2 principles. One, there is no such thing as perfect data quality. And I find that telling people this, it helps take the pressure off the conversation because it grounds the following conversation in a realistic perspective. For data to be perfect, it would have to always be precisely representative of the real world object. And we know that that's extremely difficult, if not impossible, for the objects we describe with data in the course of performing our work. And the second perspective is that data is meaningless absent the context of relationships. Your relationship to a real-world object and the relative importance of that relationship compared to other relationships dictates your data quality priorities. This is what drives you to ask the critical questions: how complete does my data need to be? How accurate does it need to be, etc. And I often think about these things in terms of prioritizing the relationships that the organization has, and then what data you need to maintain your responsibilities inside of that relationship. So the highest priority is the data that you really need to maintain your responsibilities in those relationships. In contractual relationships, that's very easy to identify. But in other kinds of relationships, especially in a relationship between, say, you and an aspect of the environment, it can be a little bit more difficult to determine sort of what is my obligation within this relationship and what data does that obligation necessitate that I collect and maintain as a matter of high priority. And then the next level of data that you should prioritize data quality for in all of its aspects is that information that's not necessary, but is there to allow you to operate further and analyze a situation, a set of conditions, and to see what opportunities are available based on that additional data. So I would require that to be defined something more as opportunity data or speculative data. And these are the kinds of conversations that you need to have. And I find that people are much more open to talking about relationships and mission than they are about talking about data quality per se. So the way to get into conversations about data quality is to say, hey, we're not shooting for perfection here, but we're shooting to get better so that we can have better fundraising outcomes, for example, or better mission impact for this program or that program. What can we do about that? Well, let's start with our relationships. Let's start with mapping our constituent and engagement life cycles. Let's start about talking about what our obligations are within these relationships, like how does our organization position or define those things, and then use that to transition into a question about priority or key processes that take place within that constituent life cycle, or that the life cycle of managing the data about that thing or executing processes, and then say what data do we need to collect as part of that process, and what sort of data quality rules do we need to build into it, whether that's from while the data is being collected or after the data is being collected in some sort of review process, or how that data is maintained over a period of time. So that's the thing that I really want people to take away, is that data is meaningless, absolutely meaningless, absent the context of relationship. So that's the lens that is most successful in having these kinds of discussions. So the specific approach to data quality for each organization therefore relies on clarity and strength in the organizational strategy, both at a high level and is extended through programs and projects. The strategy should tell you the relationships most critical to success and the value placed on each relationship. Then you can prioritize your resources according to that value. This often requires some degree of transformation at an organizational level before improvements to technology may be effectively leveraged. And that brings us back to this slide that you saw earlier, which is to say, when you're talking about data quality and improving data quality, either inside or outside the context of technology, usually inside the context of technology, transformation is critical to your success, and transformation effectively starts with leadership. So pretty much every question that I get about data quality eventually traces its way back to leadership, to organizational strategic definition, to really clarifying and understanding what relationships are high priority to the organization. And there are ways that you can go about doing that or getting help doing that if that's something that your organization requires additional perspective to do. And Build Consulting helps organizations with their consistent constituent or beneficiary relationship lifecycle definition as a key aspect of our work. I think that it's important to celebrate the successes. Organizations of any size and complexity that make data quality a cultural endeavor typically have good data quality relative to their need for such, while organizations that do not will generally have poor data quality. So do it well, have some enthusiasm for it. Try to inject enthusiasm about relationships into the discussion of data quality at your organizations. And then make sure to celebrate your successes, even if they're incremental, even if they don't get you all the way to where you want to be. For all the talk about data quality in the social sector, having truly high quality data is relatively rare, and the ability to use that data to inform meaningful action is even rarer. So if you are able to have successes in your organizations, make sure that you celebrate them yourselves, take a breath, pop the champagne, and try to get others excited about it too, because in the absence of that exuberant spirit, again, focused on and contextualized within relationships as being the primary benefit, it's hard to maintain data quality over a period of time. It really is a lot about turning data quality into a storytelling thing, into a relationship thing, into a celebrated thing inside of your organization. So again, I mentioned that this was a lot of information real fast. I wouldn't necessarily be able to answer all of the questions, although we do have some substantial period of time left for Q&A if there are any questions that people would like to discuss. But otherwise, you can connect to me via email. That's my email address up on screen. Also, if you received a newsletter for Build Consulting promoting this webinar, my email is the sender's email for that So you can respond directly to that email message if you still have it. You can reach out to me through my LinkedIn profile at linkedin.com/in/Peter Muris, or you can just visit our website at buildconsulting.com/contact. The resources section of the site is where we post all of the content for these presentations afterwards. There's a lot of good information there about information strategy, about data quality. Also in our blog, there's a lot of information about leadership engagement and technology and data initiatives. There's an information strategy white paper for you. So there's a lot of great resources there that you can take advantage of. And we're constantly producing new blog posts and resources and webinars all the time. So please make sure to check that out on a regular basis. And if you haven't yet, while you're on the site, take an opportunity to sign up for the newsletter as well. And now there's opportunity for me to answer your questions. If you have any, you can use the chat feature or the questions feature in GoToWebinar to ask questions. So I'm just going to hang out here, and if you have any questions, please send them through. So one of our attendees asked, I'm curious, and others maybe too, about what technology tools you use or recommend to manage all the data. That's a great question. It's such a broad question. There are so many different data management systems out there for various needs. There are so many different integration tools. There's so many different data analysis and reporting tools. It's really a difficult question to answer. I've been working a lot with organizations over the last several years on consolidating data from a diversity of different points onto a CRM platform that can also be used sort of in the manner of a data warehouse. And usually that means Salesforce or some other broadly capable CRM platform, such as Microsoft Dynamics CRM increasingly is becoming an option in that area as well. You can look at our website to get more information about some of those products and their evolution. But one of the things that we're constantly talking about with our clients is, what's the benefit of what we would call a platform play for their organization? Like, do they have the organizational maturity and the resources to be able to pull all of that data together on one platform? Or do they need to figure out how to keep it an individual best of what we would consider best of breed purpose designed solutions for particular needs, whether that be human services case management or program management systems or what have you, and then figure out how to integrate and then report on that data. Another thing that I've been working on a lot lately is integrating either one-way or two-way data syncs between Salesforce, as an example of a CRM system, and Intact or another ERP system to really make it possible for program teams to be able to see data from different areas of their organization. So program budgets and finances, and also program reports and workflow and processes. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do two-way data syncs between those systems to say, okay, well, the programs teams need to have access to this data. Some of it's financial, some of it's not. They're only going to be accessing the data through Salesforce, but they'll still be able to see it. And then similar for the financial folks, they'll be able to have access to some programmatic data regarding milestones and reporting that's non-financial in nature, but also be able to get the full financial details, and they're only going to be doing that through the ERP system, and then having some collaboration tools that consolidate across the two. So that's a rambling answer, but it's just talking about some things that I've been doing lately. Another user asked, how do I, as a data quality manager, address the different volatility required by some data? Are there specific techniques as compared to standard data management? I'm intrigued by allowing for this elasticity of data. I'm not sure that I understand the question entirely. I think the main thing that I've encountered just in general is for organizations to call out high volatility data and really classify data as to its degree of volatility, which might be done on a high, medium, or low level of volatility. And then how often that real world object needs to be reconsidered, maybe through a survey or some other sort of observational method to determine whether that data has changed. And really maintaining those schedules and milestones and reporting, giving yourself the tools in order to do the trend analysis. So, I mean, it really, in a lot of the times, comes back to, for high volatility data, it comes down to the frequency with which you revisit the real world object to make sure that the data remains accurate, and having a system that allows you to maintain the record of history on that data point, and it also allows you the access to that history to be able to do comparative reporting or trend reporting. So that's all I have for you right now on the answer to that question, and I'm happy to follow up with you via email. Somebody asked regarding consistency, how to create and implement best practices, how to encourage adoption. That's a great question. I think it starts primarily with just awareness. A lot of organizations don't maintain change logs in regards to policy and procedures, and also technology as it pertains to data management. Data gathering as being a part of data management, and then data management over time. So it's really just necessary to say who owns this data in this particular area of the organization, and as a part of that ownership, what are they responsible for maintaining in terms of change logging. And in absence of that, it's difficult to say, and change logging should be done not just in regards to when policies change and when practices change, but also in regards to when major data set changes were made. So as an example, if you did a data cleanup initiative in November 2019 and removed 20,000 duplicate records from a constituent database of 300,000 total records, you might, and you didn't make a note of that fact, 3 years down the line, if you're looking at, you might say, well, we took a dip of 20,000 constituents in that year. So did we have a bad year, or did something else happen where we made some sort of compression to our data? And if you didn't have a historical log that allow you to interpret that data point and mark it in some sort of visual or narrative fashion for people that were translating the data, you wouldn't be able to make that determination. So I would say best practices just make sure that people slow down enough to develop the policies and procedures and be aware of when they're changing something that's going to impact data, and then put it in a well-formatted historic log. And this is a practice that I've instituted at several different nonprofit organizations, and it really takes discipline, and it really takes the organization understanding the time commitment that's involved in that, especially if there are frequent changes, to make sure that it works properly for the entire organization. Another person asked, what about more affordable options for small nonprofits? That's a great question. There are a lot of options out there for small nonprofits, and it's really, I would really need to know more specifics about what the needs were in order to answer that question. Smaller nonprofits often have challenges in that if they go for an all-in-one system, it can be really expensive, or it can require a lot of in-house expertise to be able to manage it well and keep it configured and maintained, even if it's a cloud-based SaaS system. But they sacrifice data and integrity if they go for a bunch of sort of more loosely connected or integratable small systems that are more in those best of breed categories that have lower costs. So there's just some trade-offs there, and it's unique to every organization. Somebody asked, I'm trying to develop a data management plan to streamline data processes, improve data quality, integrate all internal data reports as well as external databases. Whew, that sounds like a big task. Like community needs data, elevate data utility, and save time in data analytics. Know of any templates or tools to help simplify, unify, and enhance our data management? Wow, that's a big question. It also says it includes program impact data, fundraising, and donor data, community data, administrative and financial data, etc. Wow. I do have a template that's available. It's not right for every organization. We end up approaching this in different ways depending on the capacities and the the sort of maturity of each organization as it comes to data or information management, because if you communicate something that you expect to be broadly absorbed and followed in highly technical ways when there isn't that same language compatibility, you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot every time. But I do have a template that is for information management policies and practices, helps identify domains of data ownership, and helps manage everything from data quality to data security, and helps identify policies, procedures, accountability measures, all that kind of stuff. Again, it's really particular in how it's applied to each organization, and it's often most effectively done in one particular use case inside of an organization, make a success story out of it, and then move on to the next area. So if you'd like to follow up with me on that, I can make that available to you. I'm not sure how useful it will be as it currently stands, because it's pretty generic, and but it's definitely, even just a quick run through of the sections of that document would provide some meaningful perspective. So I'm happy to do that. It'll only take a few minutes. Any resources to access about data volatility? That was another question. I don't know what exactly is meant by that. If it's pertinent to in terms of templates to plan for measuring data volatility, or to help create plans for monitoring highly volatile data. That's one aspect of what that question could mean, and another could be just, are there any articles or that have been written about data volatility? The answer to those questions are yes. Those things aren't things that are directly available from Build right now, but they may be over time. But there are program impact evaluation type resources online that you can find that will help talk to some extent about data volatility and how to address that within your programs. Mostly from a collection and data collection methods standpoint, and from a performance or impact monitoring and evaluation standpoint. Another person asks, management does not seem to value the direct data management team efforts and successes. It is all about the core business, legal services in our organization's case. What are your recommendations for catching their attention? That can be hard. I think the case for change is often predicated on doing two things. One, it's quantifying to the extent that you can the business opportunity to be gained by having better data management. Like, what story can you tell about the opportunities, and how can you make that as quantifiable as possible? Another one is to take, which is sort of less favored, is to take the risk assessment approach. Like, what risk does it take put the organization in terms of maintaining its fiduciary responsibilities, or in terms of not being able to tell its story effectively, or in terms of just pain and suffering or morale that would reduce in high turnover because of the data management challenges inside of the organization. Those are all things that you can do for catching the attention of management or executive leadership. Ultimately, another way to do it is if the organization has a broader need for just some CIO level perspective, you can introduce that idea. It might be a broader benefit to the organization across a wide range of technology and data projects, or even just from a business analysis capacity perspective. So you could make the case for either CIO mindset training for executives or management teams, or even individuals. That's something that we can provide on an as-needed basis from Build Consulting. We have a little training program for that that we don't publicize, but we do offer and use from time to time. Or we could talk about the different business benefits of introducing a part-time or interim CIO into the organization, and include among those considerations data quality and the benefits of better data quality to the organization in general, and how to make that argument. So I hope that's helpful. I'm open to having a further dialogue about that as well. I've had trouble specifically with that in the legal services space as well. So it's a challenge that's familiar to me, and I'm sure we could share war stories about it. So there aren't any other new questions coming in, but I just would like to say in closing for this Q&A section that there were a number of questions from registrants, as I alluded to earlier, about specific systems, about integration potential between different specific systems. This isn't really the forum to address those questions, and in a lot of the cases, I would probably need to ask follow-up questions to get the sense of what was specifically needed. But I will just chime in and say there was one specific question about the Razor's Edge and maintaining data quality in the Razor's Edge. There are tools that are available for that are both baked into the Razor's Edge and are available as third-party standalone tools. Excuse me, particularly from Omatic. And there are, in terms of standardizing, somebody asked a question about standardizing, centralizing all data in the Razor's Edge. That may or may not be a good solution. Razor's Edge is really does what it does very well, but it's ill fit for a number of other things, which is why organizations that have fundraising and service delivery aspects to their work, or fundraising from donors and membership, might use two different CRMs, of which Razor's Edge might be one, and integrate the data as needed. Integrations can also be a challenge with Razor's Edge, but they are possible. So that's a broader conversation. So if you had any Razor's Edge specific questions, we do have a lot of depth of experience in Razor's Edge due to its prevalence within the nonprofit space and our frequently running up against it at clients. So that is something we're happy to get into with you on a more specific basis, and I can either do that or refer the question to one of my colleagues. And finally, somebody asked if I could put my contact information back up on screen. Here it is, peter.miras@buildconsulting.com, linkedin.com/in/petermiras, or simply use the contact form on the website. So again, thanks to everyone. It was great spending with this time with you. I hope it was helpful, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for joining this Community IT Podcast Part 2. You can find Part 1 in your podcast feed if you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.